We are the original Saturday Menudo Club, except no substitutes. Ya no más.
Hi, I am Elsa. You are watching the Saturday Menudo Club ZoomCast with host Carmen Cavazos and co-host Andy Valadez. Please like, share, follow, and visit SaturdayMenudoClub.com. Ya no más. Stay hungry, my friends.
Hello, my name is Andy Valadez. You're watching the Saturday Menudo Club ZoomCast, which is better than a podcast. My name is Andy Valadez. I'm your co-host of the Saturday Menudo Club ZoomCast, here with your host, Carmen Cavazos. Hey, Carmen, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Andy. Welcome, everyone. We have a real special treat for you today. We have a fantastic guest that's going to be joining us today, Andy.
Yeah, so we started the ZoomCast. We meet once a month, but we're going to be expanding our meetings. But in the meantime, we're missing opportunities to bring a spotlight to leaders talking about important issues, not just here in Houston, but in our state and in our nation and around the world. Going back, like we just had Machine Gun Preacher come speak from Africa. Can you believe that?
That's
And that was
fantastic.
that was an awesome event. We actually officially endorsed him, and he's got an awesome mission to feed orphans in Africa. And he was in Texas sharing his story about his ministry and what's going on in Africa. But today, our guest, you want to go ahead and introduce our guest for us, Mr. Larry Kaifesh,
Absolutely.
our Colonel?
We have a fellow former Marine. We have Colonel Larry Kaifesh joining us today, and he has some extremely interesting and very informational topics that we're going to be discussing today. And I think it's something that our population in general should be informed about. And he's here to give us a lead up into what he's learned so far and anticipating what may be coming from this. Okay. So we do have Colonel Kaifesh with us today. Colonel, would you like to introduce yourself?
Well, hello, crowd, and Andy and Carmen, thank you so much for all you're doing with the Saturday Menudo Club and engaging with the community in order to promote right and freedom. You guys are doing great work, and I commend you, and thank you for having me today.
Absolutely, Colonel. So Andy and I have been doing the Saturday Menudo Club. We've been bringing in a variety of not only candidates that are running for local positions, state positions, and national positions, but we also find it important that individuals from within the community come in and speak on topics that they may have information about. You yourself are a very decorated Marine. Could you tell us a little bit about what your background is when you were in the service, a little bit about what happened after the service, and what has led you to the position where you're at now?
Yeah, I'll be happy to. I'm going to go real quick. Obviously, born and raised in the suburbs of Chicago when it was a great place and a wonderful place to grow up. Not so much today. I was a scholar athlete. I ended up going to Indiana University where I wrestled there. I was on a full ride scholarship. Upon graduation, I had to make a decision. Do I continue with my career with wrestling, or do I try something different? I decided I wanted to go and expand my horizons and serve my country in the way I thought I could best do that, which was in the Marine Corps. And I went to officer candidate school. So this was during the Cold War. So I'm going to date myself a little bit, but that was a big threat. Everybody was worried about the big Soviet threat. And I went to fight for that. And shortly after, becoming a young officer, the Cold War ended. So it kind of put things on a wild spin. I was like, okay, now what do? I came here for the specific reason. The Soviet Union is dissolved. This Cold War is no longer there. Where am I going to go next? I decided I was going to get out of the Marine Corps because what they said is because there was only one superpower, there wasn't going to be any more wars. Right? Because the wars at that time were the conflict between communism and capitalism. We were fighting in different battle spaces across the globe. But now that there's only one superpower, there would be peace. So I said, well, I want to take the fight to what I think is the next greatest threat. And this is in the mid to late 90s. But I saw it that the American values and principles that made the country great were being assaulted. And I said, I'm going to go after and try to support and promote the all-American values and principles that made America great. So I'm either going to go to Hollywood or I'm going to go to DC. And it's interesting. Now, this is in the late 90s now, mid to late 90s, but those two locations are capitals of influence. In DC, they push influence through legislation, right, and laws. And in Hollywood, they push influence through culture. At the time, I thought DC was too corrupt, so I ended up going to Hollywood. And my goal was to promote movies and programs that valued and amplified the values and principles that we all love and that give us our all-American qualities. While I was there, I was doing the Marine Corps Reserve. While I was there, 9/11 happened, and that changed things significantly. I got called up to active duty. I ended up becoming a company commander for the first company that marched into Baghdad on the march up during Operation Iraqi Freedom 1. After that deployment, I said to myself, this is what I was put on earth to do. I will continue to deploy and serve our country until until we win the war, or the Marine Corps says no more. So from 9/11 until I retired, approximately 20 years later, so from 2001 to about 2020, every other year I went back to the combat zone. And I went back because I was moved by 9/11, like we all were. I wanted to go and fight for right and freedom. I was willing to do whatever it took, and I did that. I will tell you, towards the end, after the 5th, 6th, 7th deployment, I realized something's amiss. We're not in it to win it. We have these never-ending wars where we should be able to win decisively if we were committed to it, but we weren't. I ended up retiring, I went back to Illinois because my family was there and my folks were getting older. I ended up becoming a commandant for a military academy within Chicago Public Schools, which is horrendous, right? I knew it was going to be a challenge, but I wanted to have an opportunity to see how bad it was and to hopefully be able to have an impact on those kids stuck in that environment and giving them opportunity to advance and progress. While I was there, I was fought every day. We could not discipline the students. We could not hold back any students. The students could do pretty much anything they wanted, except bully a person that's trans or homosexual. That was the one thing the school district did not tolerate. This is the 3rd largest district in the country. It was during COVID, and then during COVID, the CEO of Chicago Public Schools, Pedro Martinez, a real piece of work. That's a whole nother story. He gave everybody in the district the day off to get their 5 to 11-year-olds vaccinated and boosted. Now, I had done a lot of research at that time, and I had spoken with Mary Tallybout and Robert Malone, Peter McCullough. I had done work with these people, and we all knew that that was child abuse, and that was a crime against humanity, and it was unacceptable. So I sent out an email to the cadets and to the parents, and I said, please do not get vaccinated or boosted until you look at the government data that you can find on this website. It was called OpenVAERS, Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System. Within minutes, I got a phone call from Chicago Public Schools saying, did you just send this email? Is this you? And I said, yes. Well, you went against policy. You're going to be suspended. We're going to investigate you, blah, blah, blah. I said, well, actually, this is a legal requirement. It's called informed consent. You have to share any benefit with any risk for any drug or vaccine, especially an experimental one. Long story short, I was fired shortly after that. One of the proudest days of my life. But it is at that point that I realized there's something more going on. This isn't politics as usual. There was something very dark occurring. Now, I had a TS/SCI clearance for almost 30 years in the Marine Corps. I considered myself fairly smart. I was a news junkie. I followed the news. I read a lot. I thought I knew what was going on. But it wasn't until after I was fired and I started to delve in to what really was going on did I realize almost everything that I had been taught, and all of us, we Americans, has been a lie. And our government and our media have been joined at the hip and have provided a very dense propaganda initiative against us. So the reality is most Americans today do not have a clue about what's truth and what is really going on. We know what they tell us, but sadly, what they tell us is not what is reality.
That is so interesting to hear from someone that has had a military career of 20 plus years. Yourself as an officer, Andy, and I as enlisted, We go in because we want to protect and serve our country. And what I see in your career, not only in the military, but outside of the military, as you speak about, you sending a letter out, a memo to the parents and warning them to do their research. You're not forbidding them to get it vaccinated, but you're informing them and letting them know that they do have a choice to research this before it's injected into their child, and you get reprimanded for it. A lot of the messaging, like you mentioned, from our local government, from our media, which are tied at the hip, as we all know at this point. And here you are, a Marine that served 20 plus years in the military, that had the insights to things that normal citizens aren't privy to. And here you are being reprimanded for it. How did that make you feel, Colonel? What was the message that you were getting from how you were being treated by trying to expose or educate the everyday citizen?
Yeah. I will add that, in between my deployments to the combat zone, 7 in total, I went to the War College to get a master's in national security and strategic studies. I worked on the Hill as a congressional fellow and military legislative assistant. I worked in the Pentagon for the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the Secretary of Defense as a battle captain. So I had a pretty well-rounded perspective on what was taking place. When I saw this and I saw this assault, I realized this is an evil I have not seen before or recognized before. And that is why when I started delving into it, what I learned, I realized I needed to get out. So this is 5 years ago now. I've been doing the study. I started a website, then I was doing a podcast, then I was going on speaking tours, and I still am doing all these things, but predominantly I'm writing now, and I write on Substack. But I just knew that this information needs to get out. The information is out there, but you have to go look for it. It's not going to be given to you spoon-fed. You're not going to get it from corporate media. You're not going to get it from an elected politician, sadly. There's only about 1 or 2, maybe 3 that I think are even worth sharing some of this information, right? But so I just recognize that the world is not what I and we Americans all thought it was, and the truth needs to get out, because the intent is, bottom line, I'm just give it to you real quick. There's a small group of people that want to create a new world order that creates a one world government that puts we the people into a digital concentration camp. Most Americans at this day, and even global citizens, can feel it. They recognize it. They see what's happening with the censorship on their posts on social media. They see what's happening with the mandated vaccine that is now proven to have been harmful, never safe nor effective. They see what is happening, that the deliberate lies coming out, even of this White House, who we had all the faith and trust in, we were going to make America great again, come out and say the Epstein files is a hoax, and he never had a client list and didn't blackmail anyone. So
I want to touch a little bit on the subject. You mentioned something earlier about the war and how you yourself have been deployed 5, 6, 7 times out into it. Give us some background for those that are wondering, what is the connection? What were you seeing with the never-ending war at that point? What were you seeing with the COVID pandemic that we were told was a mass extinction of the human race if we didn't take the vaccine that was being promoted? What is the connection between those 2 events? What is the connection that there could possibly be between the Epstein list? And how does it all tie together to the new world order? For those of us, or for those that may be wondering, what specifically can you tell us on a simple terms? What would be the connection between all 3, if not more?
Well, that's a great question, very deep, but I'm going to do my best to get to it. But the first thing I recognized, okay, I spent over 20 years of my life deploying to the Middle East because of the attacks of 9/11 and the narrative that I was given, we were all given by our government and by our media. It did not take me long. And I defended this. I remember speaking to people that said it was an inside job, that it wasn't the Saudis, that it was done through you've heard the term, right? It was the Israelis, it was the Mossad, it was the CIA, it was this and so forth. After careful study, I don't have all the answers to be able to tell you exactly who did it and how, but I can tell you the narrative that was given to us is a complete lie. Okay, 9/11 was an inside job. There's enough data out there. In fact, I've written several articles on this you can find on my Substack, and I'm going to be rewriting and updating one of my last articles I think I wrote last year on the subject, because there's so much more data. But just to give you a couple little tidbits. 9/11 did three things that was needed for I call them the Sabbatan globalists. You can call them the deep state. You can call them the globalists in general, but the establishment. But what it did is it initiated a war that allowed us to go into the Middle East and do regime change in 7 countries. So shortly after 9/11, Wesley Clark talks about this very well. He said he was in the Pentagon. He said one of his colleagues came up to him, and he was a general, a retired general at the time, and said, "Sir, we got a plan for what we're going to do after 9/11." He goes, "What is it?" We said, "We're going to do regime change in the Middle East with 7 countries." He's like, "Why?" He goes, "I don't know, but we're doing it." So what 9/11 did was initiate that ball rolling. Now, of the countries that have had regime change or civil wars, of those 7, Syria, Sudan, Somalia, Libya, Lebanon, Iraq, the 7th one is Iran. So all the countries that were identified 2 weeks after 9/11, they've all had regime change or civil wars except for one, and that's Iran, and we're getting ready to do that right now. So
Well, there was that bombing that happened not too long ago that, a lot of people were questioning why the bombing to that specific area. Was there anything left of the area after the bombing? Because as we know, we were told whatever evidence was deep down dug into these mountains. Do you think that was a lead up to regime change in that area?
Yeah. You're hearing a lot of talk, right? That President Trump is the president of peace. Well, sadly, he's escalated the war in Iran, using 14 of the largest bombs on the planet to go after a facility that Tulsi Gabbard, his national security advisor, just a few weeks before, a couple months before, said Iran didn't have a program and they weren't developing enriching uranium. He comes in 2 months later and drops 14 bombs on him. That has escalated. That has not gone away. Okay, just because the media is not talking about it, believe you me, there will be repercussions. I fear, this is my concern, that the repercussion is going to be a false flag attack in the United States, most likely a bioterror attack, pandemic, or attack on the electrical grid. It will be blamed on the Iranians or the Russians in order to facilitate full-scale conflict in that area. Just like 9/11 facilitated us to go to war for 20 plus years in Iraq, Afghanistan, and then facilitate the regime change in six or seven countries. So that is not over. And not only what 9/11 did is it grew the defense budget. Okay, it blew up the defense budget. And why is that important? Because in 1995, our bankers got together to talk about our budget and talk about our pension plan. They recognized both were too far gone. The pension system, there was no mathematical formula. They would either have to push benefits back several years or reduce life expectancy, and the budget was already gone. So they started pushing money outside of the country starting in 1997. In 2001, September 10th, the day before 9/11, Donald Rumsfeld came out, and what did he say? He said, we got a problem. $2.3 trillion were unaccounted for. The next day, the Pentagon, the World Trade Towers were taken out, right? So, but that facilitated the wars, which we needed. And the third thing it did is it gave us the Patriot Act. Now, the Patriot Act is anything but patriotic. It basically gave the government the capability and freedom to monitor we, the American people. And this is all part of what they need in order to create the control grid for the new world order and the one world government. So the reality is today, and I think most people recognize this to a degree, but the reality is we live in front of a one-way mirror. Okay? Our intelligence apparatuses, the Sabat and Globalists, they are monitoring everything we do 24/7. Everything we see on the computer, everything we post on our social media, every text, every email, every message, it's all being collected. And you wonder why your computer's so smart. And before you even can say something like, I want a new pair of shoes, it comes up on there. They collect so much data, they can anticipate what you're going to do next. They know that if you do A, B, C, you're going to likely do D, E, and F next. So that's what's going on. But that's what 9/11 did. But just a couple things for 9/11, just to give you a little piece of it. Again, I've written several articles on the subject matter, but the reality is we've never seen a plane hit the Pentagon, the most monitored building in the world, and in the most monitored city in the world. I was just talking to folks today. There's not one piece of evidence that a plane hit that building. There's also no evidence that a plane hit in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. It's no coincidence either that 3 towers fell that day on 9/11 at the speed of gravity, which is absolutely impossible, even for the most basic physicist, elementary person that knows physics. It could not fall at the speed of gravity without a controlled detonation. But there are still people that believe it was absolutely legitimate. And here's the trickiest part. Howard.
As a flight attendant for over 23 years, I could tell you that an airplane does not just drop out of the sky without somebody noticing. And for it to have a precise location as it did within the Pentagon, there would have been some indication on air traffic control radars that would have indicated that a plane would have descended to that level to have that precision to strike it at that specific section. So that being said, these are excellent points that you're making. One of the things that we have established already within our conversation today is, you've noticed as an officer within the military deployed multiple times overseas, the never-ending cycling of the war. And then you come home and you are aware of this outbreak, this pandemic that's put upon not only the American people, but the people worldwide. And then we come to, obviously, the New World Order and the direction as to why these events were established. Would you be able to tell us, Colonel, for those that are wondering, New World Order, what does that mean? Who does that involve? Is it individuals? Is it organizations? Is it just something that would affect the United States, or would this be worldwide? Would you be able to tell us just a little bit about who or what the New World Order is?
Yeah. Well, the New World Order, as talked about, is a new world order. It's getting rid of the old world order, the old world system, in order to usher in a new world order. This new world order has one global government. Okay, and this is something that's been sought for eons, going back to Nimrod and the Tower of Babel. There is a very strong spiritual element to what's going on. But the bottom line is they want a one world government that is beneficial for them. The folks that we are talking about, I call Sabats and Globalists. These are people that are inspired by Sabat Zevi. Sabat Zevi was a Satanist. Sabat Zevi was a pedophile. Sabat Zevi was really the seed developer for Zionists. Okay, it gets tricky. This is a very complicated and very lengthy matter. But Sabat Zevi passed away. A gentleman by the name of Jacob Frank became his heir, so to speak, and continued the movement. Jacob Frank and Mayer Rothschild of the banking dynasty and Adam Weishaupt, the creator of the Illuminati, got together. The Illuminati was created in 1776, and the three of them came together a few years later with the quest of a one world government. So today, what you see, basically, those at the top, they've been working on this for centuries, but those at the very top of first finance, politics, industry, media, medicine, education, entertainment, they are all aligned. They wouldn't have got to that position unless they were part of the group. George Carlin makes a joke about it. Where he says, if you're not, they're all part of the same group and you're not in it. It goes back. He did that in 2005. But they're all part of the same group and they all have the same end state. And now, if you get to a certain position of power and influence and you are not part of the team, you will be blackmailed so that they can control you and make sure that you become part of the team. That's why you had Epstein going after business leaders and politicians in DC. That's why you had P. Diddy in the entertainment industry going after actresses, and music artists. Remember I talked about it? DC and Washington, or DC and Hollywood. These are the two capitals of influence. And if you can control the capitals of influence for the country, then you can control the people. And that's their ultimate goal, to control us. Now, here's the sad part, because AI is so efficient and AI is going to make many jobs obsolete, they don't need many of us. So if you wonder what happened with COVID, I talk to experts on a regular basis. One of the numbers that I hear from one of my most respected is that over 20 million have died from the vaccine from the beginning, and that's growing every single day. This is globally. Edward Dowd has said similar numbers when it comes to people that have become disabled because of the vaccine. In fact, the term SAD, sudden adult death syndrome, is now something that is a reality after COVID. And I don't think it's a surprise, but I don't think anybody out there has not seen somebody young, healthy, die suddenly. Heart attacks, myocarditis, neurological issues, and turbo cancers. We see it happening. This is all part of the plan.
Unfortunate. Very sad. Very sad. I know that many in my family and I have had discussions about, there was a lot of us that did not get vaccinated because we were young and we were healthy, and we felt like it was something that our body would develop immunity to over time, being exposed to it. And of course, my whole family has had COVID, just as I'm sure a lot of the American people and worldwide have experienced at this point. But we were sold something that wasn't factual, and we were sold fallacies. We were, the majority of the people were scared into taking something that it was an experimental drug. And then when there were substitutes to try to counter, like ivermectin and other medications, we were told that that was not an option for many. And it was hard to get prescriptions. It was hard to get a hold of these drugs that potentially could help. Do you believe that there would be, and I think you mentioned this previously, another pandemic that's released upon the population? Or what do you foresee the next outbreak would be?
Well, the unique feature about the Sabatin Globalists is that they do, it's called predictive programming. They tell you what they're going to do before they do it. I'm going to give you one example. Prior to COVID being released, there was a simulation exercise. It's called, I think it was called Operation 201, funded by Bill Gates. And it was a scenario of a virus being released in a wet market in Wuhan, China, that ended up going globally and killing hundreds and thousands of people. Okay. That was the simulation just months before COVID. Just a few months ago, there was another exercise, and it was based on a bioterror attack. And it was based on a virus being brought in and being released within the United States and killing hundreds of thousands of people. If you watch stuff, you start to see things. Shortly after that exercise was done, that simulation for a bioterror attack, in the newspaper was a story about two Chinese students, I think it was in Michigan, who brought in a virus that could have been lethal. So this is them telling you what's going to happen without telling you directly it's going to happen. But they have a conscience, and they think it's okay. If we tell them beforehand through these secret measures, then we can do it and we're not going to be punished. So that's the beautiful thing about it. If you look at COVID-19, Anthony Fauci in 2017, don't be surprised. We're going to have a COVID a pandemic underneath Trump's watch. Bernie Sanders before the 2020 election results. Don't be surprised that Trump wins on election night, but after we count the mail-in votes, he ends up losing. So they do this on a consistent basis. They tell you what they're going to do beforehand. It's called predictive programming. I write about it extensively, but I pray I'm wrong. But I wouldn't bet on it. But almost certainly there will be a false flag attack is an attack that we commit. Our government is responsible for, but blamed on others, other entities. 9/11 was blamed on 19 Saudis. Almost certainly it was an inside job by the Sabbatian globalists with the help from those that are inspired by Sabbat Zevi. Almost certainly, I believe within the year we will have an attack. It could be, I think most likely, bioterror attack, just like they practiced in the simulation a couple months ago. Otherwise, we've also seen them talk about electronic grids and communication grids being addressed. And either one of those would be very catastrophic and have a very negative effects on we and humanity. And if you've noticed that their desire is to keep us continuously under stress, continuously exhausted. Almost every week there's a major significant event that's coming up that you're like, what the heck is going on? Whether it's a flood, whether it's a riot, whether it's a fire, whether it's a bombing in a war, but it continues to come after us. They're bombarding us. And this is all by design. They're trying to overwhelm us. And ultimately they're going to try to say, well, we could stop all this if you just listen to us.
Yeah, I feel like with so much information, like you said, the simulation that had been released prior to, events happening, it's almost like a preconditioning that they put the population through so that when an event does happen, they feel like they have to turn to the government for help. What would be your advice if people want to educate themselves at this point? If people want to be prepared for anything that could happen potentially in the future, where would you recommend that information be sought? I know you mentioned there's a Substack that you write on. If you could please give people that information where they could look you up and the information that you've been writing, and then maybe give 2 to 3 other sources that you trust that you can also direct people to and say, if you want to be prepared, if you want to know what's happened, if you want to know what could potentially happen, these are the sources where you could find that information out.
Yeah, obviously my Substack, larrykaifesh.substack.com. I write about this on a regular basis. 2 of my favorite sources that I go to repeatedly is my good friend Patrick Wood. Patrick Wood is the global expert on all things related to technocracy and transhumanism. When I got fired, his book was one of his books was the first one I read. I've read 3 since. But Patrick Wood has been writing about this since the 1970s, and his material is flawless. So I'm like, how in the world can this information not be out there if you've been writing about it for 50 years? He goes, this is what we're dealing with. This is the suppression. This is the censorship. This is the cancellations. They can't let the truth out because they can't survive the truth. So Patrick Wood is one. Number 2, one of my favorites, absolute favorites, is a woman by the name of Catherine Austin Fitts. And I'm a member of her organization. This is the Solar Report talking about the Omnivore. When I come speak to you on Saturday, I'm going to be discussing with you Omnivore. So I used to call this 5th generation warfare that we're in, but it's actually advanced. 5th generation warfare is based on information and propaganda. This is bigger than that. Omnivore is based on a war that's waged against us in every single venue possible, from information to psychology to our food to our internet. And then so Catherine Austin Fitts, Patrick Wood, and then my Substack for now. I actually on all my articles I do a lot of sourcing. So I have hyperlinks to numerous phenomenal outlets. The third one I'll tell you right now is Henry Makow, his website focused on the Illuminati. Okay.
Interesting. All of these topics are they're captivating because we've not only lived it in our lifetime, but there is so much happening. I know I was having a conversation with a friend of mine. I visited Hawaii before, and it's it's unfortunate events that happen on their island. And they talk about a blue laser light that people have speculated they've seen prior to the fires erupting there. For instance, same concept happened out in Malibu, California. There were several instances where people said we seen an infrared blue light come from the sky. So much is out there, so many questions. What people need now are answers, and I think you're a great source to start to educate people. The Saturday Menudo Club will have you come and speak at our club. This is September the 20th. Is there a specific topic that you want to really focus in on when you come and speak to our audience?
Yeah, the subject I talk about is complex. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to simplify it the best manner possible, put it in a very containable package, but most importantly, again, like you mentioned, provide you and us directions on what we can do to make sure, because let's face it, we are in a war. If we don't recognize we're in a war, we're never going to win it. So that's the number one. We have to recognize, one, we are in the war. Number two, who's the enemy? What are their capabilities? What are their limitations? And what's their center of gravity? What gives them strength, and what if taken away will ensure their demise? That's what needs to be happening if we're ever going to be victorious against the greatest evil ever known. And I call them the Sabbatan Globalists. And again, I talk about them at length on my site. But my focus is going to be to try to simplify this. I've written about it, but I'm going to try to really delve down, make it more digestible, make it more understandable, and then leave everybody with some instructions on what they can do to go forward to mitigate this enemy and hopefully, God willing, defeat him.
Amen to that, Colonel. Andy, is there a way for us to provide on our website, which is www.saturdaymenudoclub.com, is there a way to provide the Colonel's link to his Substack so we could get people informed prior to the meeting on September the 20th?
Yes, of course. So as I'm listening to your interview, you're not the first Marine to question this. One of the most decorated generals was Smedley Butler, and he wrote a book called War is a Racket. It's an interesting read. It's available on Amazon, and I didn't know that book was out there. And the globalists tried to co-opt the Marine Corps back then, and he said no. Also, if people read The Creature from Jekyll Island, everything you said is backed up in that book that I think Griffin wrote. I can't remember his first name. Was
Edward Griffith. Edward Griffith. I have that book. He's a phenomenal source. He's 90 years old and he's still going strong. Super brilliant. And I've used him as many references. And if you look at any of my articles, he's usually in one of them.
And everything you said, he wrote in the book. And of course, it's a read. So the Bible says, study to show yourself approved. And so if you're a Christian and you're a thought leader, or you're just someone that's curious, it's one thing to go down the rabbit trail, but these people caught the rabbit. Another book that was written, and I'm reading this one now, called Tragedy and Hope by Carol Quigley. And he wrote about what the deep state, the globalists, were doing back then, and wondering why they weren't more open about it. So you guys need to be celebrating this. Now, the double entendre in this title is our tragedy, their hope. Tragedy and hope. And of course, Bill Clinton cited him as his professor that he learned under. Now, I was attending Texas A&M University in 92, 93, and of course, we took a public relations course, and my instructor basically warned us never trust the media. So it's been known that the media has been co-opted and bought. Even in Hollywood, we did some work in film. The MPAA was also infiltrated by the CIA. That's why maybe why we joined the military, because Top Gun and Full Metal Jacket, these movies that what was the other one? The Officer and Gentleman. These movies that inspired us to do that. But anyway, we did our best. We served our country, and we're still serving. It's like, hey, you know what? We are warriors. We are watchmen. We are protectors, defenders, but we want to be on the right side of truth. Another book that you kind of brought to mind here, just from hearing you, is there's a thing called Click Run. There's a good book that I read called Influence. A click run is when you use a key word, it automatically triggers, right? So there's a book that was written a while back called None Dare Call It Conspiracy. So the word conspiracy is click run because it automatically, with people that aren't paying attention, they poo-poo or they disregard, or they think that things aren't true because someone used the word conspiracy. Well, it's no longer conspiracy theory. It's now conspiracy fact. Right. And that's what we're discovering. And the spirit of the Saturday Menudo Club is more, stay hungry, my friends. We use that tagline, come hungry for information. It's not really about the food. It's about the people. And interestingly, it's going to take people If faith moves mountains, people move mountains as well. And I think that's what you're working on, is to educate. Is from the homeless to the boardroom. The Lord has His people in low places and high places, and those that are coming around. Even on the we consider the opposite end of the aisle, the Uniparty has done a number on our country, right? So you're seeing the left and the right folks coming together now. Say, wait a minute, what's going on here? And they realize that, hey, we're on the same side here. We
Yeah.
actually believe some of the same things. So I think you'll see that this Saturday as well, as we bring good people together. And that's really what tyranny hates. They don't like when good people, free thinkers come together and question the narratives that are being pushed and debunking. So any final words you want to say before we exit?
Yeah, I usually end with this because a lot of people, this is complicated, it's stressful, it's threatening. I've heard a lot of people say, I don't even know what to believe anymore. This is all by design. And I will talk on the Menudo Club when we get there. I will talk about how do you know you're talking to a source that has credibility and does not, and what should you listen to help guide you. But most importantly, I leave with this: pray with purpose, fear nothing, and fight like victory is our only option, because in this fight it is. But
Wow. That is too hard, Colonel. One of our mission statements at the Menudo Club has been "Ya no más," which translates to "and now more." We will not take the lies anymore. We will not tolerate the deception anymore, and we will not allow the manipulation to continue. And you are coming in. You are coming in with truth. You are coming in with honesty, and we all are coming in with courage. So we anticipate your visit on Saturday. I don't want this to be all a doom and gloom. So I want to leave on a hopeful message. And you touched on it: prayer, unity, and together with the truth, we will succeed and we will survive. And we will overcome. And I'm a big believer in Christ. I believe that in the end, the victory will be His, the glory will be His, and we stand in truth with Him. Anything else you want to add, Colonel?
I'll leave, since we're on inspiring messages, but one of my favorite is never doubt that a small group of committed citizens can change the world, for it's the only thing that ever has. Margaret Mead. And I think we're in that category. I think we will be victorious. I just think we need to make sure we wake up enough so that we can be. Thank you. Thank you again for all your time, Andy and Carmen. And I look forward to seeing you shortly.
All right, you've been watching the Saturday Menudo Club ZoomCast here with Colonel Larry Kaifesh and Carmen Cavazos, our host. Again, the Saturday Menudo Club is an immediate experience for leaders.